Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning. This is Jarma Bennett with the State Water Resource Control Board. Thank you for joining me today for the July CEDEN User Group meeting. We'll go ahead and get started with a couple of updates. I wanted to let you know that we've had a few reports of the advanced query tool, the AQT, not working earlier this year. We had problems with the map, so we removed that because Google changed their services, but we just hid the map, but some of the underlying code was still referencing that service. And so later, like I think it was about a month ago, they further decommissioned that service so it wouldn't run at all. So we made fixes for that. And then there's been a couple of weeks where we have had issues with the replications from the swamp database. So not all of those data are showing up. And I think everything's fine now, but we've had these different things along over the past couple months that have interrupted service temporarily. So if you're experiencing problems, we believe everything's fixed now, but if you're getting questionable results, please do let me know. But hopefully everything's fine now. And then also we have a data that's being submitted through the state board. The checker at CEDEN.org is backlogged. We're having some issues with our loading tools. We're trying to resolve them, but if you're haven't been seeing any new data from that route, that's why. And again, we're working to resolve those issues and get rid of our backlog. So I don't, oh, there, Tessa is on the line. So Tessa Foja is our swamp quality assurance officer. And we have had some conversations. This group has had conversations over the past couple months about the definition of dissolved, and we got a lot of good feedback from the group, and has led to this not changing the definition of dissolved, but hopefully Tessa can give us a little more information on that decision.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, I'm not sure we need to, there's not that much to say. Basically, some folks sent us some information about like the previous, an older memo of when the definition was changed to what it currently is about the 1 micron. And I guess, we still think that for the majority of methods, the 0.45 is what is used, but there are a couple that have higher levels that kind of define it as dissolved for that method. So we decided, at least for the time being, we should just stick with the current definition. But I think that was a really helpful memo to look at because it had a lot of guidance on what fractions are supposed to be allowed for different analytes. And I guess I've just, in talking with my staff and looking at the database, I think we have not been following that guidance strictly. So I think that's something we're hoping to kind of set up as rules in CEDEN 2.0, so that gave us a good idea of something that we could try to implement of how to control those combinations more in the future. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Okay, well, I think
Lisa has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering, could you put the memo out for people to see who don't have the memo?
Oh yeah, I guess I didn't realize that wasn't sent to the whole group, so that's a great idea. Yeah. Jarma, would you mind sending that out to the group since you have
Sure.
the list? Okay, because
Yeah.
you sent the email to me, so I know you have it.
Yeah, I will do that. Any other questions?
Just thank you for reviewing that. We appreciate that a lot. So thank you.
Yeah, I wish I guess I'm hopefully maybe we can get up to speed a little more on like, I didn't know that memo existed, so I gotta, I guess maybe do a little homework and see what other documentation there is on past decisions that were made. So that would be great to review before we make more decisions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tessa, and again, those who participated in the discussion. We will move on to our next item, which is also about our CEDEN modernization project, just to talk about that a little bit. We've been talking about it for quite some time here in this group about redoing CEDEN essentially to have a more user-friendly and efficient database that would combine both the current functions and additional functions for CEDEN itself, as well as the surface water ambient monitoring programs database. They would be combined into this one modernized database. We currently have a proof of concept project with Earthsoft in customizing their Equus product. So that's a product that many different, I'm not sure how many, but there are many instances of their database, and we're having it. The proof of concept is to customize it so it's an online checker similar to what we have now, but it will be interactive so that if you check your data and errors are pointed out, like you used the wrong format for the date or something, you can change it right there on the screen and recheck your data, and hopefully it'll pass and submit without changing your file, re-uploading it, and playing that upload download game. So that's one of the features of it, as well as doing more quality checks, not just formatting and business rules checks as we have now in CEDEN. So I wanted to talk more about the EQAP function. I think I've mentioned it in previous meetings that there is an EQAP function. So I tried to kind of relay my understanding of it in this brief document here. So the EQAP refers to the numeric objectives that should be contained in a quality assurance project plan and expressed in a way that the system can read, namely an Excel workbook. It doesn't replace the actual QAP that has more information, such as details on training and personnel, but it's the numbers part. It defines what checks the system will run on the data being submitted, and it defines what flags the system will apply to data being submitted according to results of those checks. So these flags will be in addition to any of the QA codes that the data provider submits. So that part won't change. It's like we have now. Data providers will flag their own data with the QA codes to essentially the same list that we have now of QA codes, so the combination of individual QA codes. We are breaking down the EQAP into two different sections that will allow us more flexibility and, again, I think easier to use for everybody. One will be, we're calling the parent EQAP. It'll be standard for everybody, not customizable, being referred to as the CEDEN Master Parent QAP. It defines the items to be checked. So like holding time checks, blank contamination checks, relative percent differences for LCS, and things like that. So it's not setting what those levels are, it's just saying these are the checks that will be considered. If you're familiar with EQUIS and their DQM module, the specifics, I did include these specific references to the tabs of their usual EQAP workbook. But again, these are within each of these tabs are just referencing specific rules, examples of which are listed here, like holding times, etc. Then we'll have the child EQAP. And this is can be changed according to the project. There'll be at least one default child EQAP, I guess I should say. That's the, I didn't read here. I think it's called the surface water and CEDEN surface water ambient QAP. Eventually there might be one for drinking water, groundwater, different types, but at a minimum, what we're going to be starting out with is just this one default EQAP. But data providers can submit a request that their EQAP or the QAP that they submit be converted into an EQAP so that they can then run their own checks or run their data against their own numbers. And I kind of skipped over that part, that, you know, the checks, the specific numbers include the holding time. So in that worksheet, we'll have, you can specify like 45 days for a specific method, or however the actual number of, and then you get to provide the units as well for the method, the specific method. And then if the data exceed that specification, then an H flag will be added to the data. And then in addition to holding times, there's also a section for control limits. And so these include detection limits, associated prep methods, upper and lower surrogate recovery limits, and those types of things. Again, these are the specific numbers that need to be complied with, and if not, a flag will be added separate from the QA code that the data providers provide. Adam, do you have a question?
I do. So I know you had said it's a separate flag. So I think you've talked in the past that it's a separate field, but it's not actually different flags. So like H is still hold time violation.
Yeah, it's a subset of all the QA codes that we have, and so it could be, I think the hope and expectation is that the QA code field, and it's currently called the reason code field, but I think we're trying to come up with a more descriptive name, but those two flags will hopefully be the same, that the data providers are flagging it the same way that the system flags it, but we're keeping those separate so that we can see what each of those different processes are flagging.
Okay, and then the other question I had was, you had talked about defining different sort of threshold or recovery, limits of acceptability by method. Mm-hmm. Are you able to do it more specifically, on an analyte specific or constituent basis? Yeah.
I think for holding times it's by method, but for those other, the control limits, I think there's more specificity, like matrix, or it's medium code, but that's related to the matrix. And it has additional breakdowns.
Okay. And then for hold times, are you only able to define sample date to analysis date hold times, or can you define other hold times?
Yeah, and I'll bring over the an example, the kind of messy workbook. But if you can see if I can get it a little bigger. So we have collection, analysis, to preservation, collection to preservation. I don't think the leachate is applicable to us. Collect to prep, preservation to prep. So it has, prep to analysis. So yeah, there's a lot of different breakdowns.
Okay,
Don't
awesome.
don't pay attention to these numbers at this point in time.
Right, but there are options. Thank you.
So when you are registering your project, you can define your controlled vocabulary value of a QAP, like is done now, where it's just a vocabulary value of the QAP name and description. But in this new system, you'll be able to upload a PDF version of your your whole QAP, and then, as I said, also request that it be turned into the applicable portions be pulled out and turned into an eQAP that can then be compared against the data that the specific data from the project in which to which the QAP applies. So it can be those specific numbers can be compared to your data. Initially, that translation will be done by water board staff, just because it is, the workbook is a little complicated, and to get the process down. I think eventually we, and again, all this is caveated on, accepting the proof of concept and moving forward. But eventually, if all that is successful, we would like to be able to allow users to do their own translation into a workbook, so it's not dependent. The water board staff aren't holding up that process, but initially it'll go through the water board staff. Tori, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I'm really confusing
Oh.
the child eQAP versus the what do you say, program, the other one above.
Mm-hmm,
You
parent.
indicated that the parent, yeah. And I'm sorry, I think I just want to make sure I understand. So the parent eQAP, you say it's not customizable, but it doesn't have actual specific values that it's checking again. I think I don't understand the difference between the parent and the child. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And I'll do my best to explain it, but so the parent QAP is defining the rules, like which checks to run, and then the child is what numbers those checks that are being called are looking to. So you, as a data provider, you won't be able to say, I don't want you to check hold times, for example. You can't take that whole check out, and so it's setting up the checks, the rules of which will be checked, and then the child is the specific numbers. So that's the customizable part.
Okay.
So it's the
So-
framework, I guess, kind of like the framework for the parent, and then the details for the child.
Okay. Okay. But like like when you think of blank contamination, you could be looking at different types of blanks, like the method and like it goes by sample type, right? Like you can choose what sample types to evaluate. Because there's like different evaluations for like field blanks versus method blanks. And, you know, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so
I think I understand that though. So the parent is just setting up. Okay, thank you for explaining that. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. It's I worry about showing this because it's confusing and I won't be able to explain it much more beyond than what you can see. So, but I'm hoping that if you can see the different kind of, sorry, I didn't know it would do that. The different breakdowns between the checks and the rules. So like the relative percent difference, there's a lot of different ways that the relative percent difference can be checked. So you see all that, like you're saying, those sample type that has all these different ways in which the relative percent difference field is being considered. And so those are different rules that are within the parent QAP. And then the child QAP will say what is acceptable, what are the acceptable relative percent difference? Is it 50%? Is it 40, 20, you know, the specific numbers.
Okay.
But I did simplify it on those examples. I might have just said relative percent difference, but it's relative percent difference in regards to LCS and MS and MSD. And
yeah, because it can definitely be different depending on the, you know, they can be different within the same analyte and method. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Can you add to that parent, or are you guys only going to have specific like some, like for example, some programs do like a field spike, like there's multiple different types of things that they do. So I'm just wondering if that parent EQAP is always you will be constantly adding to it for different types of parameters to be evaluated.
We don't anticipate making many changes to the parent. So, I mean, I think it's pretty comprehensive because I mean, this is just one. So then there's this check tab and the parameter tab. So it, and I'm not sure how these different different tabs that are all within the parent are structured to each other. I just understand what I understand is that they're providing the checks that will be considered, and then the child then considers the specific numbers. But we will make it available for review once we get our numbers fleshed out more. It may not be in this, hopefully it won't be in this format, but it will, we'll make available the different rules that are being considered.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Adam?
Hey, Jeremy, thanks. On the previous spreadsheet, there was a column about qualifiers, and that made me curious. In the child EQAP, are we able to?
This is not the qualifier like the result qualifier.
Okay.
This is an additional flag. So there's actually 3 different flags that these are along the are in line with the EPA quality flags, if you're familiar with those, so we'll have those as well. But
Okay.
if that wasn't your question, please.
Well, so my question, that's good to know. That wasn't exactly my question is more about like, are we able to choose like, oh, we want to utilize the high bias, low bias QA codes as opposed to just outside of thresholds or something? You know, are we able to choose which qualifiers apply to which rules?
Can you point me to?
So I get, sorry, qualifier is going to be the wrong, not what would currently be a QA code. There are some QA codes that are sort of more specific versus more generic. And depending on sort of how we implement the thresholds and rules in the reason code. So like depending on how we set up thresholds in the child QAP, are we able to sort of choose which reason code is applied, or is the reason code set in the parent QAP where it's like all you know, LCM or LCS threshold violations get a particular reason code?
Yeah, the reason codes are set in the parent. You know, I think there's a high, maybe a high and a low for some things when it, you know, it's exceeded or below, but beyond that, it's set in the parent. So you get that reason code that's listed here.
Okay, thank you.
Tori, is your hand up from before? Or did you have another question?
Oh, sorry, it was from before.
That's okay. So, I mean, that's pretty much what since we hadn't talked much about the EQAP before, that's what I wanted to go over. We are still behind in where we thought we would be by now. So I don't have an estimate of when we'll be able to open up testing or anything like that, but wanted to get into some more information so you guys know what's coming. But that's really all I had to share today. I'm open to questions if you have some, such as Adam.
Sorry, one last question, I think. Are we able to set thresholds for rejected data, or is rejected data expected to be sort of weeded out before? Because currently it's like you guys use the QA codes, right? All the VRs and LRs and Rs. But usually that's like a normal QA code, but just like even worse than normal, right? You know, it's a IL, but it's like a really bad IL. So I wasn't sure if that was part of this or if that's supposed to be handled outside of this.
So whether we'll flag anything R?
Well, so it's like you can have like VRIL is a current QA code, right? And it's like, oh, it was rejected because it was an IL, but it was, you know, a particularly, there are thresholds within a QAP of like what causes a rejection. So it's that, is it just everything generically gets an R if it exceeds a certain threshold that is said?
I think it, since I'm not seeing the, I'm just seeing R. I think that's it here. If Tess is still on the line, she may know, but I don't. Tessa, do you have a better understanding of the question than I do?
No, I don't, unfortunately, but I'm trying to take some notes so we can kind of, I haven't looked at the EQAP in a little while, so I feel like I need to go back in and study again.
Okay. But I mean, you know, they're separate columns. So I think, you know, if the reason code is R, but the QA code still contains sort of more specific reasons for reject, that doesn't seem crazy to me. I just was curious.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
I think we'll probably definitely want to talk about when R is applied when we don't have an R, because that, I mean, that is very project specific when you reject data. And I think what Adam was indicating was that if there is an R, will it be represented with your guys' exports? Like, will you be able to visualize the data that is flagged with R on your online tools? Because currently that is not the case. So anything that has an R now is not visual on the online tools. So I think if you're rejecting data that we do not have as rejected could be kind of a definite issue. So, I mean, I think we should definitely dive into when we're rejecting data and when we're not, and whether it's visible, because that could be kind of huge for programs.
Yeah, I mean, you do get you will get a, you know, in addition, when you're checking data, in addition to kind of the errors that you get now, it should be a notification that this flag R, or whatever flag it is being applied to the row. So you'll at least get that. I think it would be good to have some place where you can get all of the data like you're suggesting, but probably a different, not like the go-to tool, but like if you're, you know, have a menu item that says if you're interested in rejected data or some other thing, you know, make it harder to get to so people don't accidentally stumble upon it and use it like it were non-rejected data. But that definitely makes sense that we'd want to make it available somewhere.
Yeah. The rejecting data is definitely, yeah, it just makes me a little nervous if we're not rejecting the data and then you are. That's definitely going to be difficult. Because there can be, like, when you think about QC, you can have a lot of different situations. And even though it's outside QC limits, it doesn't mean that it's always rejected. So I think definitely focusing on that and making sure it's very clear would be probably good.
Yeah, and we definitely agree with that. You know, I think for SWAMP, it's very rare for us to reject data.
Right.
You know, we generally try to avoid that at all costs. So I I'm not sure how much we've talked about this internally already, but if we will definitely make sure we dive into that and we can bring it back to this group.
Yeah, because there's a lot of rejecteds there just for like LCS, you know, stuff that's low, like a matrix spike recovery low, that is definitely not always rejected. So yeah,
No.
I think yeah, I'd be very careful applying rejected to items, especially when the data provider is not rejecting the data.
Yeah.
Jarma, this is Cassandra. I'm calling in. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
Oh, great. I just had a question too about like sometimes will it have the ability, if you're trying to check RPDs or something like that, to look at the native samples and see that maybe one is a non-detect and one isn't? We think of them as kind of secondary criteria that sometimes you need to check before you can apply a QA flag against like an MQO. Will this tool have the ability to do that?
I think we've talked about that scenario, Tessa. Sorry, when we have a
Okay, can you clarify what you're talking about a little bit? So you're saying to check if the native sample is a non-detect or not, or?
I don't have the MQOs in front of me, but there's times where you have to go back and look at the native samples and make sure that they're not non-detects, and then your criteria might not be applicable.
Right, like you couldn't do the calculation.
Right.
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if this tool will have the ability to do that versus just flat out looking at the RPDs.
Yeah, it does. It recalculates it, and so it does link to the native or the parent. But I
Okay.
know we did have a lot of discussion about this, so I'm not sorry. I haven't studied up on this stuff just recently, so I feel like I can't speak to the details. But these are all things we can go back and check and bring back to the group.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
I kind of want to piggyback onto that. It's not just the if you can't calculate it because of non-detects, because we have business rules for that as well. But a secondary criteria for, like, example, if it's a field duplicate and it says it's greater than if it's greater than 25, then it gets flagged. If values are greater than the reporting limit. So there really is a secondary criteria where you know, a lot of our pieces do have secondary criteria, meaning it's this or that, depending on what's going on. So we have a lot of situations
Yeah.
where there's
Okay.
secondary criteria.
Now I see what
Not
you're talking
just it.
about.
Yeah, I think
I
those are they're two different situations. Like Kat's pointed out, the non-detects with like a 0, but then there's also a piece where, which a ton of people, especially a ton of programs, especially utilize it with field blanks and field duplicates. There's definitely a secondary criteria just in general that you wouldn't be able to calculate, but is within their QAPP.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's what I was thinking more of, Tori. Thanks.
Yeah.
yeah, got it. I think we have like the ability to kind of put in those different scenarios. But yeah, so these are just all helpful points, and we'll check on these to report back, because I thought that we did have that ability to kind of set these like limits, and like if you're above this, it would get this, and if you're below, it would get this flag, or flag or not flag. So I think you could set all those in your child QAP, but yes, we will. I'm writing these scenarios down so we can go make sure they all work out.
We have some very interesting QAPPs if you want examples. Because we have because we have the same system. We have a database that stores all this, and I can tell you one thing: it's definitely not all consistent when you start getting out to different projects and programs and how they evaluate their data. It can definitely be different in some cases.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you want to send a couple examples that you think have a lot of, or may have some of those more unique things, I think that would be helpful.
I can pull out the data from our database, and you can see the different scenarios that we've come across so far anyway.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tori.
I'm sorry, Jeremy, what about updates? Because QAPPs change and qualifiers change, for updates, we have to upload the PDF so you can change it.
I think we would expect a new project code and then a new QAP, the updated QAP to go along with it, and then request that it be translated to an eQAP.
That should work in most circumstances. Sometimes things change in the middle of the year due to like lab stuff, but yeah, there's definite caveats to that, just so you know. Sometimes things can happen in the middle of a project code, which is not ideal. A lot of times it's like, are you going to be looking at reporting limits and MDLs to ensure that those are correct? Or is it just like percent recoveries and relative percent differences? Are you checking in terms of ensuring that their data is has the correct reporting limit and MDL?
At least there's let's see, where is that? The reporting limit Yeah. It goes in this one.
But I think, I mean, MDL and reporting limit are required, but Jerma, do you think, I didn't think there was a check to compare it to like what would be in the QAP of like what they require for an MDL and RL.
Well, we have this field here.
Okay, required. Okay, maybe there.
Yeah, because that can be kind of important to a lot of programs, but that one, I don't know, especially MDLs, they can kind of change. It doesn't look like you're, I don't know, they can kind of change in the middle of things sometimes depending on the lab's instrument, and it's not ideal, but things can change in the middle of a project.
Well, I mean, I guess if you want to know what they were even now, I don't, to know which version the beginning of the project was using versus the end of the project, it seems like you would need to have a new version.
It definitely would be updated. It's just hard when it's double checking against it. I just want to make sure that our data isn't going to be held up because the reporting limit changed, or I guess that's my worry, is data being held up for something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure at this point what our expected turnaround time is for translating that into the EQAP. I think it will depend on how many people request custom child EQAPs. But yeah, we don't want data to be held up either, obviously. But hopefully with the other efficiencies, once we get the process down, the turnaround time will be relatively quickly. But I don't have any sense of that yet.
Yeah. Does that mean that you don't have to submit a child and then your data wouldn't be evaluated against anything?
It would be evaluated against the default, which is the SWAMP child QAP.
So if you submit your child, then it will evaluate against yours, not the SWAMP.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Adam?
Thanks. Two things. You've mentioned a couple times that like you guys will be providing like the ability to submit a PDF QAP and have it translated to an eQAP. Mm-hmm. Is that like required, or is it possible for individual projects to fill out their own eQAP?
At this point, it will be water board staff. Eventually, we're hoping that can be available for people to do it themselves. But initially, as we get the process down and understand, get to know this workbook, and we don't want to give out this whole workbook because it has all these tabs that I don't understand all the tabs. And not to say that other people won't, but it contains both pieces, and so the parent, which we don't intend to have changing, and the default child QAP. So we just think the process flow initially will be that water board staff does it, but again, and eventually we want people to be doing it themselves.
Okay. Are you I mean, this is way down the road, but will you eventually sort of share the default child EQAP so people can evaluate, like, oh, does this meet our needs to not? Okay.
Definitely, so they know what their data, if they don't provide a different one, what their data will be checked against.
Yeah. And then the last thing is, last meeting, we had briefly covered integrated report data and non-detects and MDLs and RLs. And you had provided some clarification after the meeting with regards to non-detects requiring values other than -88 for MDL and RL. And I just wanted to make sure like the whole group got that message, because I think we had sort of a thought that maybe that wasn't the case during the meeting.
Yeah, okay. So as you said, last meeting we talked about that, and we had talked with the integrated report group about making that a change so that only one or the other was required, but and so that's what I was remembering, but then we didn't actually make that change, so it continues to be that both are required, as it has been in past solicitations that relied on CEDEN data.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions at this time? I can send out the memo from the past that was referred to about dissolved fraction, and that the short write-up I had at trying to explain the EQAP situation with the modernized project. Anything else, Tori?
I'm so sorry, and I know you might not have an answer for this, but my boss is gonna want to know something. Ultimately, for the timelines, you indicated that you're still behind. Do you have any idea? Like, are we talking 6 months? Or are we talking like another year? I'm just kind of, I know it's really hard when I'm just wondering if they've given you any sort of timeline on their.
They have
Maintenance.
not. I envision 6 months, but please don't hold me to that, because I don't
Okay.
know. That's
Okay, so it's not gonna be like next month or anything like that. And
No.
okay, so okay, I just want to make sure, like, if it's within like the next few months, I think we'd really kind of want to know. But if you're thinking it's like it's around, it's going to be farther out before we even start testing it, that thank you.
okay. Well, I think that's all the questions then. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll plan to meet next month. And so if you have specific questions before then, or that you would like to discuss at the next meeting, please let me know so we can put it on the agenda. Otherwise, have a great day, and we'll talk to you next month. Bye.
Thank you so much, Dharma.
Mhm.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you, everyone.